Barry Diller's memoir is out today. It is called Who Knew? It tells the life story of a familiar face to our viewers here on Squawk Box, from Diller's formative years growing up in Hollywood to the start of his business career, launching Movie of the Week on TV for ABC at the age of 27, leading Paramount Pictures, getting Fox TV off the ground with Rupert Murdoch, and so many stories in between. Last week, I spoke with Barry Diller in downtown Manhattan, and we talked about what led him to write a memoir about his life and his career and some of the surprises and twists about his personal life that came up across the way.
Well, I thought only one thing, which is it's a good story. And it's a good, cracking story, if I could tell it.
Barry Diller has shaped the media world for more than half a century, redefining television, launching networks, and backing bold ideas long before they were safe bets. The memoir of his life, titled Who Knew?, is already generating lots of attention.
All this closet stuff, I mean, if I've been in a closet, it has been the most brightly lit closet with a glass door that you've ever seen. You know, I understand kind of the catnip of media, but all this stuff about my sexuality at my frigging age just seems to me, well, it's obvious and over the top.
Diller opens up about his sexuality and his relationship with his wife, Diane von Furstenberg, the great love of his life.
She said to me 6 months ago or a year ago when I knew I was going to publish, she said, just get ready. I said, get ready? What are you talking about? She said, just get ready.
In the book, you talk about having a code.
I just said I didn't want to live a hypocritical life. And so it was really rules. It was, you know, in a way, rules of conduct that I just adopted for myself. Interestingly, when I was like 20, 21, 20, somewhere around that period, I knew enough. And I said, well, there are things I will do and I won't do. And those are my rules. And it was adopted because I didn't want to be a hypocrite, and yet I didn't want to tell anybody anything. So I said, I have to have rules for that, and I made them up.
Rules for a life he lived in fear. But Diller says that gave him a superpower that propelled his career in business.
If you have one great fear, you don't have room for many others. And I think that, in a weird way, as painful as the early development was, I think that's actually a great gift, odd, crazy-ish gift that I was given, that it allowed me to be fearless in so many other areas.
What do you think you learned about yourself in the process of this?
I've always had a problem living in the moment. And so doing it, actually, it's living in the old moments, since I didn't really live in those moments at the time, was kind of fun for me. And I learned things in the process of doing it that I had never known.
Okay, you just said something that's fascinating to me, and I think it's actually true of some of the most successful people in the world, but I also think it's a bit of a prison. You just said you don't live in the moment.
Yep.
I think that you live oftentimes in the future. I think you can be somewhere, but you're thinking about other things that you are hoping and projecting are going to happen in the future.
Sure.
Is that what's happening?
Yeah. For a lot of reasons, I worried that if I lived too much in the moment, it would take things away from me. I thought if I lived in the moment, it would make me cynical. One of the things I've always tried to hold on to is a certain kind of naivete.
The book really is, I just want to say, a love story, because he does say in the book that he is gay, thought he was gay, thought that's what was going on in his life, meets DVF, actually doesn't like her the first time he meets her.
Yeah, Diane, I read that too.
And then meets her again, and as he says in the book, starts making out with her like he's in high school. And it was, I think, a surprise to him that this was happening. And I think one of the things, and we talked a lot about it, the title Who Knew really is a double entendre, because it's a little bit of who knew,
right,
and who knew. We talked about how I've known him for 25 years. I never asked him, thought I knew, sort of, but I never really knew, but also marveled at this remarkable marriage that they have. And we're going to get to talk to him about all of that and so much more in the next hour.
Look, I think Barry's point that he didn't want to talk about his personal relationships, pretty valid one. And people don't expect most people to have to disclose everything that's going on in their life at work. Why would he be held to a different standard? And I think his rules were pretty appropriate, too. Just the idea that he would not take a man to a heterosexual event was one of those rules, right? He had certain rules that I'm not going to pretend.
But I think
I'm not going to take a woman that I'm not with.
I think for him the complication was, and we talked about, for example, Tim Cook, who came out publicly about his sexuality, and so many others who have over the years. And actually, he talked about just the courage that some of those people had. But for him, it was more complicated because he never felt that he was the poster boy for one thing or the other, given that he was married to DVF and the relationship was as real as any relationship. Yeah. And I know, people have always sort of...
is as real as any relationship.
Is as real as any relationship. And so it's an interesting dynamic because I think there's part of him that, today he says, I wished I had the courage, but the courage to do what? To say what? Because it's a different situation. We're going to get to talk to Barry about all the headlines and everything that's going on in the next hour. He's going to be live here at the desk at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The book is called Who Knew? There's not a lot of books that I can say this about. It is a brilliantly written book. And it's a fascinating read, and he's right. It is a story. It's quite the story.